Just enjoying my nice summer evening in Chicago.
Good.
Beautiful.
Excellent. I'm actually going to go out there and enjoy some of that summer evening too. As soon as I get off the phone debating with you,
Oh,
I'll go
okay.
out there and go for a little bike ride. It's a nice day outside. It's not too hot. It's not too cold. So get out there and kind of enjoy the weather before it gets super hot or before it starts snowing. So
Right.
good. I want to welcome everybody to our Facebook Live on Mondays. We're going to talk a little bit about sacrifice. All right. And before I start to ask any questions and start to get into it with Dr. Bowie here, I want to make sure that I give our audience an opportunity to share with us times where they have had to sacrifice something very important. All right. As I was thinking about the actual word sacrifice, two things kind of came up in my mind as far as the importance of the importance of the different types of sacrifice. 'Cause I think there's a lot of things that we can sacrifice. There's a lot of things that go on that we have to sacrifice. I don't think that there's one thing that we go through that once we sacrifice it, we don't have to sacrifice anything else. And as I was thinking about this conversation, I was thinking about the difficulty of sacrificing one thing over another thing. So those were just some of the things that kind of popped up into my head. But before I kind of get into that, I first want to ask you, Dr. Bowie, what I'll ask these in singular questions because I don't want to confuse it and ask it kind of jumbled up together. So my first question out of my two-part question that I have for you is, can you give me a time in your life where you had to sacrifice something that was very important to you and you recovered from that? So in other words, I'm looking for something that you had to sacrifice in the past.
Okay. Okay. So, um, as you ask that question, I have to put it in context. I have to say, in what context are you asking me to go into my memory and discover and disclose things times in which I have sacrificed? Okay, so that context is important. Okay, so when you mention sacrifice, it's part of, in my mind, a large system. It's a system. It's a construct. It is a system on a hero's journey. I think we talked about this, probably a month or so ago, that we're all on a hero's journey. So, along the way, along in my work, I've developed a system or a hero's journey model, which I call the 4S committee. The reason why I use the 4S committee, because I'm old and it's hard for me to remember things. So I just come up with acronyms for everything. I can remember it better. So it's that. And in that 4S committee, there's 4S's that I'm more than happy to elaborate on. And now we can talk about context when we talk about sacrifice. The 4S's is struggle, sacrifice, suffering, and surrender. And it's my hypothesis is that is the way to an expansive love. That is the pathway. There's no other pathway. That's the pathway. Okay, that's the hero's journey. That's where we are going. So I had to say that to go back to your question, Andre. When have I sacrificed? I call sacrifice and letting go. They're the same thing for this conversation. What am I willing to let go of? Because in a lot of sense, letting go is a sacrifice. When you value something, when you value a perspective, when you value a mindset, letting go of that and say that mindset doesn't work anymore, and adopting a new mindset is a sacrifice, and it's hard for especially adult humans to do that because we thrive on being right, so we don't want to limit ourselves. Okay, so what comes to mind right away to me in terms of sacrifice? I think I've told this audience before that I worked in banking for a number of years, and I had this one supervisor that came up to me and told me that, you know what, Bowie, I don't like you, and I'm going to fire you. Okay, so I'm a young kid. I was about 21, 22 years. I was really in shock. I was struggling with that conversation because then I couldn't believe that a business, a person in authority would just arbitrarily, no reason. He asked him, well, what was the reason? I don't have it. I just don't like you. Now I look back at it, it could have had some racial overtones or something. It could have been some other things. I don't know. But I was just shocked by that. And I had to come to a point in my performance with this particular individual that I had to let it go. I had to sacrifice my thought process on what this guy might mean to me and let it go. Get rid of it. Kill it. That's what sacrifice is about. It's going to have to die. And just do the best I can in my performance. And, fortunate for me, it worked out because he ended up getting fired. Does that answer your question, Andre?
Yeah, it does. I mean, I have a lot of responses to that question, but I'm gonna hit you with something a little bit harder, just because I know you a little bit better than most people probably on this call. So I can kind of pull up some stuff that maybe some other people wouldn't necessarily know.
Okay.
Look, I mean, I've known you obviously for my whole life. 36 years, and some of that I didn't even know. I didn't have a concept of who you are because I was obviously a baby. But in my experience with you, it occurs to me that you really don't care a lot about what people think about you. You know what I'm saying? So to me, when you tell me that, maybe that is something that you had to let go of, but to me, that wasn't really a significant sacrifice for you. And so let me give you an example. If when it comes to your money and my money, it would be easier for me to sacrifice your money versus my money because I'm more attached to my money than I am your money. Now, I don't want you to be broke, but if you were to sacrifice your money, it would occur to me a little bit differently than if I had to sacrifice my money, which I'm responsible for. So the sacrifice is different. Do you understand what I'm saying when I use that analogy?
Yes. And again, I would have to go back to the context. Because I can't just deal with it in a singular way in terms of just sacrifice. It's in a context. It's in a context of what am I struggling with and what do I have to kill off? What has to die in me? Now, you mentioned something that I really don't care. And I do care, but I don't put a lot of energy in it. I'm not going to be upset because someone doesn't like something that I said, because I'm never trying to offend anybody. I'm only trying to either say what my perspective is, which is prone to be airfield, and at the same time just open for new ideas. But you said something that says that, it doesn't bother me. Okay. And so I'm certainly at the point that most of the sacrifice, most of the stuff that needs to be gotten rid of, let go of, is my thought process. Okay, so I mean, I can say this, and this was hard for me. I mean, it's hard for me to think about things in one way because I'm struggling with it, and then got to let it go and say, you know what? Supposing how I'm thinking about this is wrong. I mean, only humans can do that. When I started my PhD, and I went to my advisor, and I explained to Preston that, hey, I want to do this dissertation, and I want to have a rigorous study on the relationship that love has to work. And for him to tell me, you can't do that. It's impossible for you to do that. And I could see my struggle. He says, study empathy. This is what he told me. So I'm still on the struggle. So I'm not even on the sacrifice side. I'm still struggling. He says, well, you can do your dissertation, take you 5-6 years to do it. You can do it on that. Still struggling. Or you can do it on compassion. I can help you do it on compassion. We got some people at the university that can be on your committee that can help you do that. And I was struggling, and at a certain point, I almost caved in. But I was haunted by the L word, and I just couldn't let it go. And I think a lot of it has to do with my own so-called Christian background and my so-called being unapologetic when it comes to my relationship with Christ. I said, well, it's going to have to be a love conversation. I mean, I was able to convince. What I let go of is being expedient, but I thought about it. Being expedient was, I want to get through this PhD in 2 years, so I can be happy about it. But that's not the reason I wanted this. I wanted to learn something. So I had to stand up for something. I had to let go. I had to sacrifice. And of course, Connie would say, my wife would say that, hey, it was a struggle. There's plenty of times I wanted to stop and give up because you get rejected almost every day. You get some form of rejection from somebody almost every day. So that's just a latest things about sacrifice. Most of my sacrifice that I have to do is more about my thinking, opposed to, because I know young people love stuff. They love their cars, they love their big house, they love all these shoes. I talk to my daughter; she loves a lot of shoes, etc., and so forth. But I'll let young people do that. That's not what I'm interested in. I do want to refine my thinking. So I'm constantly.
You don't think young people think?
It's my experience that young people are devoid, and I say have stopped being critical thinkers. That's just
wow. That seems like a huge stereotype to my young folks. But okay, all right, I'll let you continue.
No, it's a judgment. It could be. I'm not saying it's right. I'm not saying that I have any facts. It's all anecdotal. As you guys know, I teach at a university, and especially in undergrads, I prefer not to teach in undergrads anymore because the students there, they just want to know the answer. That's all they want to know. They don't know how the answer got there. They just want to know the answer and what grade they got. And that's important. I mean, I think that's important. That's part of the struggle, But somehow because you get an A doesn't mean you know anything. And I know that from my own experience. I got plenty of A's. I didn't know anything about the topics that I got an A in. So I mean, I know that for a fact. You get your A's and you have knowledge on topics that you're interested in. I.e., why I'm in this topic today. So I would say that this is an archetype. I'm not saying it holds true for anybody on this call, but generally, I think that young people, in my experience, they don't want to think about things. I mean, we're having this conversation. I mean, the reason LTBH came about is because we found that people don't want to think about love in an energetic positive way. They want to think about it in a traditional Hollywood, noun-based love affair, romantic way, which we love. We love to feel good. And my work says that the romance side is the adolescence part of love. It's not the mature side. So that is to say that, yes, it's important, but it's not the whole thing.
Okay. So I'm gonna answer your question. I mean, I have several things to kind of add based on what you said. 'Cause you said a lot of interesting points there. But I guess when I think about when you talk about the Forest Committee, you talk about the hero's journey, I have conceptualized that to mean that not only do we have more than one hero's journey, you could have more than one hero's journey at the same time.
Yes.
And be at different sections of that hero's journey.
Absolutely.
So for me, I'm just gonna give two hopefully quick examples. I'm gonna give you an example of a hero's journey that was in the past, that occurred in the past, that I've probably gone through the cycle of, and I feel much it has brought me closer to your point, to love or to the human experience, than if I was like in the middle somewhere struggling with it still. So my example of last week, when I told you about me moving from Detroit to Chicago, that was a huge hero's journey for me. Not only just because it was a big move, but it was during a time where I was an adolescent, and as you know, and because I work with adolescents, I work with teenagers. That's the most turbulent time of a human being's life, because you're transitioning from a kid essentially into an adult, and that's a process, and you're going through a lot of physical changes and mental changes at the same time. So it's very traumatic to human beings to go through. That's why I try to give a lot of teenagers a lot of slack, because I know that they're struggling, because I've been through it, and you've been through it. So going through that process as a teenager naturally, and then moving, added another whammy to my already hero journey that I was kind of going through. The biggest thing that I had to struggle with is leaving individuals that I was close to, that were within a hand's reach of my grasp, meaning that everybody that I knew, loved, and cared about was within 30 miles of my house. So I could easily reach out to them. They could easily reach out to me. And I was comfortable with that for the first 15 years of my life. And when I moved to Chicago, that interrupted that. Not only did it interrupt it in the sense that I wasn't able to reach out to the people that I felt I was close with at the time, but I was put into an environment which was very uncomfortable. I was very uncomfortable with. People didn't look like me. They didn't act like me. They didn't listen to the same music as me. They didn't talk like me. And I joke with some of my white friends with this concept, because some of my white friends will come up to me and say, "Man, I was in an environment. I was the only white person there, and it was just like for maybe 1 or 2 hours, and they feel so traumatic about the experience. Like, oh man, I was the only white person there, and it was very like, oh, this." Well, imagine being in that position, but not only being in it for an hour or two, or a day, or a week, or a month, but years. And so that's how I felt. I was in an environment in which I was the only this for years, and that was something that I struggled with. But then when I go to sacrifice, I remember making the conscious decision of letting go the people that I knew back in Detroit that I was so close with. And when I say let go, I don't mean like I didn't want to have a relationship with them anymore, but what I mean is that I was stopped trying to kind of get back to where it was when I did have that relationship with them. When I was a teenager, I was constantly trying to go back to Detroit, and I was constantly in my mind thinking about, okay, well, this is a temporary situation, but eventually I'm gonna be able to make my own decision to kind of get back into that environment, and that everything else will be the same. And even if that was something that I could or wanted to do, the people that were involved in that, they weren't signed up for that because they were changing and evolving and growing and things. They were going through their own hero's journey. So every time I would try to step back into that environment, people would change. And I'd be like, well, what happened? You know, how come you're not acting the same way that you was acting when I was 14? Now I'm 19 and you're not, I mean, our relationship is different. It's because I've changed, it's because they've changed. And I didn't want to accept that for a long period of time. But when I decided to accept that and let that go, not only did that free me, but it opened up a lot of opportunity for relationships to bloom and blossom here where I was living now in the Chicagoland area. So that was something that at this point I'm good with it, you know.
Let me just say this, and you explained it magnificently in my mind from a purely theoretical standpoint. What you described is the difference between secure and unsecure attachment. You described it beautifully, and you guys have heard me talk about that. The most important job on the planet is a parent. There is no question in my mind that when a parent takes on a new infant, which is a miracle. So you're taking on the stewardship of, I have a miracle that I have to steward for around 18 years. What am I to do? I mean, it's an awesome type of job, so to speak, to put on parents, because it's, you know, you don't get training in it. You do the best you can in it. And you said it so beautifully that when you're going through this part, there's an attachment that comes up. Attachment, and you know, it's all about, these people gave me a sense, a good feeling. These are friends. You know, John Bowerby says that when you are insecure attached, that is, you have these experiences with another person, and you believe that they're the only person that can give you that experience. So you're insecure with that. You don't want to let that go. Some people will say that they're in love with that person. I would argue that they're not. They're going through some type of ego, you know, psychological manipulation that they feel, because it's a feeling thing that they may translate into a love conversation. But be able to delineate and let it go. Attachments go. That's one thing. That, and again, you know, you said it beautifully. If you can, I tell my clients this: there's two things that you are going to have to struggle with: your attachment to people and things. You have to deal with that. I'm not going to tell you how, because it's hard to do. I'm still dealing with it. And expectations. Expectation. Only person. This is. I'm not saying I'm right. I'm saying this is just my perspective. The only person that you should expect anything from is from you. That's it. If you expect anything from anybody else, you're going to suffer, and we haven't gotten to suffer yet. You know, because really that conversation starts in struggle. But you know, you just can't, because people are doing the best they can. They cannot fulfill your wishes. Sometimes it's a hit and miss. Sometimes they can, and sometimes they can't. And we have to have enough grace within ourselves to give them a pass. They did the best they could, just like I do, just like you do.
Yeah. Well, yeah. I'm totally with you on that. I mean, it's. When you started talking about attachment theory, which we were referring to as attachment theory, which I think is very important. It's a very important aspect of human development. Like you have to develop a secure attachment to human beings in order to be psychologically secure. Because if you don't develop that security, then essentially you go through life not trusting your environment, and it's very.
So just to placate that whole security. As you know, the first 4 or 5 years of my life, I was in and out of the hospital, so I had a very tentative relationship with people, and I was being trained in having very tentative relationships with people, except for my mother.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. And that I was talking to my sister a few days ago, and she said, well, you've always been a risk taker. You always the first one. Why is that? Why you always was the first one? Everybody else was risk averse. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
When you feel that you are loved, protected, which I felt that way, you're willing to take risks. And when it's not, when you don't feel that, you're going to be a lot more conservative. You're going to hold back, which you should.
Yeah. Well, so the next thing, and this I think is probably geared more towards suffering.
So let me say this, just to complicate everybody's life.
All right, go ahead.
Let me just complicate everybody's life here. Okay, so we talked last time about struggle.
Right.
But there's dimensions to struggle that we did not fully articulate. There's the physical element of struggle. There's the mental element of struggle. There's the relational element of struggle, and there's a spiritual or a meaning basic of struggle. They all interact with one another. They all have different strategies. All of them can trap you at a certain struggle. Okay, those 4 domains hold true again at sacrifice. There's a physical sacrifice. There's a mental sacrifice. There's a relational sacrifice and a spiritual sacrifice. And the same thing goes on for suffering and surrender. It's the same. And those types of conversations, obviously, that we have a very extensive mentoring program, which is why it takes so long to go through, because we have to uncover that. So you can play with it real time and have a breakthrough in it. We can't hide that. Just talking about it physically can take a month, because language is crude. You have to develop a rapport where you feel psychological safety. There's space that you can take in this information and that you're able to give it out in a kind and patient way. So I just want to add that out, because that's the level of complexity. And I hesitate to be prescriptive. Say, okay, just follow this recipe. No, it's more like a dance. We're really dancing here. If I were to talk to somebody about struggle, I would talk about struggle probably for about the first couple of weeks on those 4 domains, and then I'll talk about struggle in a different way and say, what's now breaking your heart? That's a different level of struggle. And I haven't even gotten to what has to be let go of. I would assert that ultimately, when you get through all the crap, it's choosing fear over love. I mean, that's the bottom line. The bottom line that you won't sacrifice because you want to hold on, you will choose fear. And it may show up in a lot of different over love. And when you choose love, it just grows. It gets bigger. It's expansive. It's energizing.
Yeah. I'm going to interrupt you real quick because I got one more point to make because I know we're running out of time real quick.
Okay, go ahead.
I want you to complicate our audience more than you already have. I'm just playing. I'm just playing with you. You made that comment about young people in thinking. And so I'm kind of stuck on that because I mean, I guess look as an outsider looking in, I could see how you could come up with a conclusion like that. Mm-hmm. However, as a young person, I still consider myself a young person or a millennial. I know the previous generations really get on millennials about just not being good people overall. But if I look at the majority of what the people that are my age, kind of how they process things, I would argue against that and say that a lot of young people are really good thinkers, and they are, and they do think a lot. What happens is that our environment trains us away from thinking.
Right.
That I think that our previous generations have set up systems that essentially tell us that, hey, thinking is not important. Making money is important, or doing this is important, or having this sports car is important, but thinking is not important. So when you peel back the layers of the onion, I would say if a person comes up to me and says, well, I'm not a good thinker. My wife says that all the time. She said, I don't like thinking. But then I started to ask her some questions, and I'm like, wow, that's some really good insights. Yeah, apparently you are a good thinker. So maybe somewhere down the line, she was trained to believe that she hasn't been a good thinker, but she is a good thinker. And I think a lot of human beings by nature are good thinkers. That's my first point on that. But then my second point is that a lot of the things that I need to move into sacrifice for is my mindset. And I'm going to talk about that a little bit later, or probably our next week's conversation. But I'm right now, I need to let go of being correct. And I don't know too many people who probably aren't in the same box as me. I mean, most of the people I talk to.
Oh yeah. There is a group of people. Don't be frustrated.
No, there is. You're right. There is, because I mean, but I would probably say out of the people that I have conversations with, they're probably like 2 or 3.
Why is that?
They
kind
of bounce back and forth.
Do you have an hypothesis on why that's the case? I mean, I do.
I do have a hypothesis on why that's the case.
Yeah, it's an easy answer to me. But I'm not saying I'm right. I'm saying as a sociologist, as an anthropologist, that makes perfect sense. I want to be right. That is an egocentric conversation. The ego craves to be right. The ego cannot love, can only blame, judge, and crave to be right. And we live in an egocentric environment. Some sociologists say we are ruled by 13-year-olds that are just egocentric, period.
Yeah.
They're not trying to help us. They're trying to help themselves. There was a study by this woman out of the University of Michigan that says that our ability to empathize each other has dropped around 40%. And she didn't say 4%. She said since year 2000, which is around 20 years, it's dropped 40%. She did a study on it. Mm. So, when you say that, there's an exercise that Robert Keegan popularized about how we are immune to change, where he takes students through an exercise so they can feel how much they are addicted to being right and what that costs them. There's a whole worksheet that he takes them through. Mm-hmm. And in fact, we use that in some of our mentorship, depending upon the appropriateness of it. Yeah. But that's it. It's just, and then the question becomes, Claire Graves and Ken Wilber says that there are individuals that are not only egocentric, but they're more expansive to ethnocentric. They include other people. Mm-hmm. Okay, and that's what we all should be doing.
I don't think that. I'm not really. I have to think about it a little bit more. I don't think I don't think that there's anybody that has an A+ and not being right. I think that we all go back to it. It's just a matter of how much we go back to it. Because there's some things that I can go back to, and I can easily take the ego out of it. But then there's some things that
you're absolutely right. You're absolutely, and I'm not trying to say that you take it out. I'm saying be awake to your egocentricness. Be awake to it. Be awake that you have all this energy on being right, and nobody is completely right because you just have some information.
Right.
Nobody has all the information. Right. You have some information.
Right.
Bring yourself down. Bring your ego down. Bring your humility down to say, look, this is what I think, but, I'm open to be wrong.
Yeah, I like that. Because that makes it a comfortable situation. Yeah. All right, so we're gonna pause this conversation because I want to get to my audience
Okay.
our audience and see what they have to say. We do have some good responses there, or a few responses there. Let's see. Looks like one of my coworkers, Erica. She's all my coworkers are giving me some. They're taking some time to listen to me, so I really appreciate that. Erica said that you're speaking my language. When I moved to the U.S., I felt the same way. I sacrificed my Mexican identity. For so many years, I thought I had to disconnect myself from my heritage. Yeah, I totally see that, and that's a hard thing to do. That's the attachment thing that you were talking about, Dr. Bowie, as far as being able to kind of let that go. That's a difficult thing to let go because you're attached to it. That's what you get brought up on, and the process of letting that go it is a journey. It's not like you wake up one day and you let that stuff go. That's something that you kind of have to go through a process to do. So thank you, Erica, for sharing that. Looks like Gerald Bowie, not you, but your son said something on here. A couple things. Yeah, G2, as you call him. He says, I've had good relationships with people across the country. I believe that the internet keeps my relationship strong. I try and make myself omnipotent. I don't know what omnipotent means. I like that word. What does that mean? You know what that means?
I mean, to me, it's some kind of God language. I don't know.
Okay. Well, I never heard that word before, but
omnipotent. I'm everything.
Yes. Yeah. So that's good. Thank you, G2 for sharing that. And Dr. Bowie, if you have anything to add, just let me know. Also, G2, my brother, your son says making money is important. So
it is. This is America. Where do you think we live? We don't live in Cuba.
Yeah.
We don't live in Cuba. He's absolutely correct.
Yeah.
That's not what I'm into, but I mean, I have no issue with people that are into that. That's what you're into. Go for it. If it's working for you, go for it.
And I do think it's important. I do think it's important to make money. I don't know if it's the most important thing. At least for me, it's not the most important thing, but definitely making money is important because that's just the social construct that we've created.
That's who we in. That's the water we swimming in.
Right. We've created that society.
That's right. That's the container.
Yeah.
If you don't have it, you're gonna suffer. You're gonna really suffer if you don't have it.
Oh yeah, most definitely. And there's people out there that are suffering who don't have it. Brittany Trico Bowie says, I have a good teacher. Maybe she's talking about her parents.
She's talking about you. She ain't talking about me.
Maybe she's talking about me. She's trying to make me feel good. Thank you, Brittany Trico Bowie. That's my wife, for those of you guys that don't know her name. And then Christine Louise.
Oh, Christine!
Yeah. She says,
homie.
Bowie's. She said, thanks, Bowie's. Mom and I enjoyed the talk. Thank you, Christine, for tuning in and viewing us. Please share our page and please share our talk on your page if you get it.
That woman's going to change the world.
Awesome. Oh, I need to become friends with her then.
Yeah, you need to friend her. Yeah. Exactly.
Excellent. All right, so we've run out of time. Dr. Bowie, great talk. I appreciate your insights. We will be back next week, hopefully at 6 and not at 6:10 like we were this week. And we have a few bugs that we're still trying to work out, but we're getting better at this. So hopefully next week we'll be on time at 6. But we'll look forward to kind of expanding on this talk and kind of moving forward from that. And if you have any comments, anything that you want to share, you can continue to like our page and share our video. And you can also still make comments on our video if you weren't able to see this live time. Thank you guys so much for tuning in, and everyone have a great day.
Peace. Peace out.
All right. So hold on. Let me stop the recording.